stop calling it torture and call it pressure, and that if someone died in custody from torture, that was acceptable. But White House counsel John Yoo went even further. In memos that he wrote for the president that were used by the military as their authority to engage in torture, he stated that they could even torture small children in front of their parents, in some cases sexually. And in another shocking turn, President Bush has taken to signing pieces of legislation that haven't even passed the Congress. President Bush was also caught engaging in warrantless searches using the National Security Agency to spy on the American people. Bush claimed that he had executive authority to ignore any federal law he wished. The 1878 Posse Comitatus law bars the military from engaging in law enforcement activities against the American people. Bush was caught using the Defense Intelligence Agency, a branch of the Pentagon, to spy on peaceful anti-war activists. He again claimed that he was above the law. Bush then claimed that the Constitution gave him the right to spy on the American people. Of course, the Constitution and Bill of Rights says the exact opposite. In the midst of the scandal, the retiring head of the National Security Agency went before the National Press Club and informed everyone that there was no need of a warrant in America. He chastised a reporter who claimed that you needed probable cause to search someone. He said all that was needed was that it be, quote, reasonable, and the government would decide what was reasonable.
My understanding is that the Fourth Amendment of the Constitution specifies that you must have probable cause to be able to do a search that does not violate an American's right against unlawful searches and seizures.
Actually, the Fourth Amendment actually protects all of us against unreasonable search and seizure.
But
that's what it says.
The measure is probable cause, I believe.
The amendment says unreasonable search and seizure.
But does it not say probable?
No.
The court standard, the legal standard,
search and seizure.
the legal standard is probable cause. General, you used the terms just a few minutes ago, we reasonably believe. And a FISA court, my understanding is, would not give you a warrant if you went before them and say, we reasonably believe. You have to go to the FISA court, or the Attorney General has to go to the FISA court and say, we have probable cause. And so what many people believe, and I'd like you to respond to this, is that what you've actually done is crafted a detour around the FISA court by creating a new standard of reasonably believe in place of probable cause, because the FISA court will not give you a warrant based on reasonable belief. You have to show probable cause. Could you respond to that, please?
Sure. I didn't craft the authorization. I am responding to a lawful order. All right? The Attorney General has averred to the lawfulness of the order.
I will now read the Fourth Amendment in its entirety. The right of the people to be secure in their persons, houses, papers, and effects against unreasonable searches and seizures shall not be violated, and no warrant shall be issued but upon probable cause, supported by oath or affirmation, particularly describing the place to be searched and the persons or things to be seized. Notice the Fourth Amendment clearly states no warrant shall be issued but upon probable cause, and that must be supported by an oath or affirmation, and particularly describing the place to be searched and the persons or things to be seized. That is the definition of reasonable. Reasonable is having a witness and having probable cause, and specifically knowing what has been done that is wrong and against the law that you're searching for. Not just, oh, we say we're being reasonable. The National Security Agency director clearly knew what he was doing. He knows that 99% Americans have no idea what the Fourth Amendment actually says. So he claims that it's okay for them to spy on us without a warrant, counting on us being ignorant. That ignorance needs to end. Or maybe he's looking at a Fourth Amendment that the rest of us haven't seen. Several years into the occupation of Iraq, President Bush told the world that they had freedom of the press. Now it's been revealed that if you write one story critical of the occupational government, you are instantly arrested and sentenced on average to 30 years in prison. In some cases, reporters are simply executed or tortured. Then it came out that the Pentagon was covertly controlling almost every major newspaper in Iraq, and that PR firms were writing most of the stories in the United States. But it's not just going on in Iraq. Billions and billions of dollars a year are spent paying off reporters, planting fake news stories, and producing fake newscasts. The military calls this InfoWars, seizing the mind of the enemy, and they are treating the American people like an enemy. When you learn that the Pentagon, the CIA, and the White House are openly engaging in military-style propaganda against the American people, then you begin to realize why large portions of the American population simply don't have their facts straight. We asked David Shaler about MI5 and MI6 connections to Al-Qaeda.
I learned of an operation in which MI6, the British External Intelligence Service, had funded Al-Qaeda to carry out an operation to try and assassinate Colonel Gaddafi of Libya. Once I'd become briefed on a plot in which MI6 was funding our terrorist enemies without government permission, I no longer wanted to be part of that setup.
We also spoke with former MI5 agent Annie Machon, herself a whistleblower, exposing MI5 and MI6 wrongdoing.
I went public in conjunction with my partner because we'd seen so many dreadful things going on, and we believe that the British public deserves better protection.
My own, not as much government but intelligence services, were carrying out operations in which innocent Libyans died.
David was briefed officially by MI6 officers on their attempt to assassinate Colonel Gaddafi by funding Al-Qaeda in Libya.
So I felt the need to say something about that. It took a long time to have the courage to be able to do that with the newspapers in this country, but eventually I decided that was the only way forward.
We had to leave our friends and family, we had to leave our jobs, our home, everything in London with 3 days' notice because the newspapers suddenly decided to kick into action.
I lived in exile for 3 years. In fact, when I actually tried to use a legal route to alert the British government about MI6 funding Al-Qaeda, I was the one thrown in prison.
We then tried to negotiate with the government. We tried to say, please take our evidence about the crimes we've seen. The government refused then, and to this day, 8 years on, they are still refusing to take David's evidence and my evidence about crimes committed by our intelligence agencies.
We have sources have told the press, sources in America from the State Department and the CIA have confirmed that payments were made to a group in Libya that was associated with Osama bin Laden. A document actually appeared on the internet which predates the attack and describes exactly the modus operandi, the way of carrying out the attack, the timing of the attack, the people involved, the Islamic extremists and so on, that I described when I went on the record. As a result of the attacks on 7/7, the British people seem much more complacent and will allow the state to infringe their liberties in a way that they wouldn't allow them to do otherwise.
While in London, I learned that Parliament had just passed a law that would ban any type of free speech within several miles around the British Parliament building.
Blair's approval ratings go up when there is an event. Bush's approval ratings go up when there is an event. What, quote, Muslim extremists in their right mind would carry out an operation that would empower the New World Order global empire whose epicenter is London and New York and D.C.? Why would anybody put up with this? My friends, never give up your liberty. Stand up against tyranny. Learn the truth and find out who has the motive. Find out who has the motive to scare you into submission, to intimidate you, to bully you, into accepting their wars of global war and empire and genocide.
At a time like this, I think people are prepared to give up a little bit of their liberty, aren't they? Just a bit. I mean, you know, it's okay. I mean, if you've got nothing to hide, it's not really a problem, is it?
I think we should be just a bit firmer on what we've allowed here. I think we've been too democratic and we've been too soft.
What it's done to people who wish to demonstrate is increasingly worrying. A lot of demonstrations, both at Genoa, at the G8 at Gleneagles, many other places around the world, there is no wish of those who demonstrate, in my view, for violence. They disagree profoundly with what their governments are doing. I'm not saying whether they're right or wrong. I'm simply saying that they should have the right to do so without harassment, intimidation, or indeed being charged, attacked, and being seriously injured.
Because the only ones who are going to be allowed to have the big loudspeakers out in the public areas, just like in China, are going to be the state.
I must say one of the things that does concern me is Brian Hoare who camped outside Parliament in the square, which actually faces the parliamentary buildings, faces the large iron gates where ministers come in and MPs go in and out. It may be